So here is my favorite part, I mean, aside from the talk. This is introductions. So during this time, we get up and we all go and we meet someone new. We make a new friend, right? So I'm going to ask, yes, that is, yes, you must get up. So I'm going to ask everyone, please stand up and introduce yourself to someone that you might not have met before. You have 2 minutes to learn about that person. You have something to talk about. You're here. 2 minutes.
That's so nice. Not like a good song, but I'm here. We did the Wranglers, but it's been 2 other meetups. I know. I know what's going on here. Yeah. It's good. Which one? Like, do you like off the street? Oh, down the street from me. Lane Street.
Not bad. It was a nice episode. What was the two that was sent in?
Actually, I started about
like a year or two.
Yeah, so I started I'm going to get into topics.
So they volunteered a picture of the head of But actually, I'm head of a company.
Actually, I take it back.
See, if I do something in the future, so that you know that is this the time? Good job.
I'm really excited about this. A ton of awesome
So you No, it's right at the circle. Maybe a block or so, like 2 o'clock. Okay. Yeah, this is nice. Oh, yeah. And it's literally right over there. Yeah. I go to a lot of meetups, and this is one of the best locations. Utility-wise, it gets the job done. I host a lot of people. This is a bit for teams.
This one really right now only one other one, Ruby. It's just because it's at a good time. The other one's that's more fun.
Whenever it's available. Last night I was at React. I'm looking for a full stack dev. Yes.
I went to the React side.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
It's a one-off. It's going to start something. Anyway.
Yeah. This one's with PC. It's called Social Tables. It was pretty good. Their use case is You go to lots of facilities, so you see inside of like these social tables are like references. You seem to have like an income bill and an energy, but like you walk out the elevator. I got to show you actually. 6 elevators, 3 main, 3 just drop the floor. Everything's bright. It was like maybe 30.
Different office space.
Giant office space, yeah. Really nice. I really like what it is.
That's the elevator. So I used to live in, I lived in London. I went to a lot of meetings there.
Yeah.
Real speaking. It'd be interesting to link something.
Yeah. I try, trust all
30 more seconds. Please wrap up your conversation. More networking event at the bar, which is where some of us will be going.
Yeah, that's totally wrong.
So I'm only a block and a half away, so it'll be awesome. I'm not going to be standing outside over here, so. All right, let's keep it going. Please take your seats. All right, thank you very much. All right, so we just have a few rules here. Number one, if you have a question, ask it. I've yet to see a presenter get upset about having anyone ask them questions, so Travis and I are pretty open to that ourselves. Number two, just be polite and courteous to others. I saw a couple people almost get into a fight at a data science DC meetup. It was amazing. Was anyone else there? It was in where was it? It was in Arlington. Yeah, it was it Pew or was it it wasn't like 1776. Either I can't remember though, but it was definitely data science DC. And this guy, one guy was talking, and this other dude's just like out of nowhere, he's just like, shut up. And this other dude's like, make me shut up. Well, I was like, oh man, this guy's like 3 rows behind me. It's gonna be a fight at a data science meetup. It's like that's not something you see every day. I mean, I know we have arguments, but okay, so here, please, no fighting, right? That's not cool. And then number 3 is my favorite of all the rules. It's share what you know with us, which means we are always looking for people to present. Everyone that presents, like Travis has presented previously, everyone that presents here is, for the most part, someone from the community. So we've been really lucky to get a lot of volunteers. And the thing is that I notice about a lot of folks, especially in technical fields, is that they tend to think that just because they know something, other people know something, and that's not necessarily the case. I know, in fact, very little. So I would like to know what you know. So that'd be awesome. And the way that I can know what you know is you get up here and you talk instead of me. So if you have an idea for a talk, anything really, data engineering, then come and please let me know, and we can line that up. Now, I gotta thank Catalyst for coming to our rescue, providing food and beverage for the evening. So first off, a big round of applause, please, for Catalyst. Gentlemen, Bennett, would you like to come up, say a few words? Speak to the people.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Bennett Hillenbrand. I'm the Director of Analytics at Catalyst. Why did I sponsor this event today? Catalyst is a data consortium that works in progressive political politics. If we do a brief history lesson, in 2004, the first real federal regulation on how voting and election administration needed to be done was passed. It was called the Help America Vote Act. And what that act did was it finally said, states, you must maintain a list of registered voters and tell us when they voted. That's it. Those are the requirements that are leveraged against the 50 states in our country that tally your ballots. Needless to say, the way that they interpreted those requirements were many and varied. But every state now has a voter file. That voter file contains people, districts, ballot information, but how that's carried around and how that's amassed and how that's expressed is very different across all these states. So in 2006, Catalyst was founded to basically pull together these 50 disparate data sets plus DC and pull them together into a national voter file. That was the first product that Catalyst ever produced. It was a standardized national voter file, and the first thing we built on top of that was matching, so we do identity resolution within Catalyst. And we started to build up these very longitudinal data sets about people and voters in the United States. As we were starting to sell this to our clients, who are major labor unions, progressive organizations like Planned Parenthood, Youth Conservation Voters, etc., they started to feed data back into us. And then my department was founded, the analytics department. So we are the first consumers of this national voter file. And we also take all of this aggregated data we're getting from clients. We build synthetics out of all of this and then models that our clients can then go use. These are things about like demographic information, what issues people are interested in, whether they identify as a Democrat or Republican, whether or not they'll vote. Jonathan is here, he builds our vote propensity models every year. He's gotten pretty good at it. And that's used widely by tens of thousands of organizers and hundreds of thousands of volunteers every year in an electoral context where they go out and tell people to go vote or ask them who they're going to support. And then all that information is fed back into us and we continue to iterate and improve. So why are we relevant? We do some of the most overwhelming data cleansing that I've ever encountered in the industry or in the space, in the sense that some of these states that we work with will change their data layouts without telling us between file sends. And then we are sort of responsible for turning that into something tidy and something usable and actionable by our clients. So we are hiring. If any of that sounds interesting to you, we go totally soup to nuts on data and product development. If any of that's interesting to you, come talk to me afterwards, or talk to Jonathan, or analytics intern Jacob is also here. He can tell you about all the terrible things Jonathan and I make him do.
That's what they call you.
Yeah.
Every day. Every single day. Right on. All right. Well, thank you guys again for coming to our rescue for this meetup tonight. Awesome. Of course, we are here at George Washington University, and my slides keep going. Honey, that's really nothing. So they do have a master's in business analytics. They are awesome because we are very fortunate that we get this venue for free on a monthly basis. A lot of the data science DC meetups are held here. So definitely a huge thanks for George Washington for continuing to support DWDC and all the data science meetups moving forward. So definitely check out this stuff. All right, this is another fun part, 15-second announcements. So that is if you work for a company that's hiring, as we heard, so Catalyst is hiring. If you are looking for a job, If you want to promote a meetup or a hackathon or God knows what, you just want to get up for 15 seconds and speak to the crowd, go for it. So I don't have a mic to pass around, unfortunately, so I will just point at people as you raise your hand. Does anyone have any announcements? Yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay, I'm Deborah Charles. I am a data scientist. I am looking for a job. My position with the District of Columbia Office of Chief Technology Officer ended on January 5th. After spending a year advising them to move to more modern technology, so hackers call the hacker, and hackers did attacker. Okay, I have a master's in finance, a master's in IT, and a certificate in quantitative finance from Finch Learning, which is a unit of Finch grading. And I have 25 years of both technology and finance experience. And I have my resume here, my business card here. If you're looking to fill a job, I'll be right here. I'm very happy to help.
Woo. I love proactive people. That's awesome. Great. Yeah, man.
Hello, my name is Casey. I'm a full stack web developer at a marketing and strategy agency called Chief. We host sometimes the data visualization meetup, which is part of the data community DC group. That will be on the 28th. We're also trying our hand at a Python workshop on Saturday the 23rd. It's our first one that we're going to try. And that will be Python for people who should know Python but don't. If you're on the fence, you know Tableau or R or something else, and you want a really great environment on Saturday morning where you install your new your local environment, you learn how to guzzle some data, and you do some simple projects, talk to me. And the link is actually on the comment board. Also, the stream and archive for this video is on the comment board too, if you want to share that out. Cool, thank you very much.
Yeah, so huge thanks to Casey for live streaming the event tonight. Awesome, man.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike Dedu, and I'm hosting a meetup group called Statistical Seminars. And what that is just presenting statistical modeling using R. And the next event that's coming up is on the 27th. I'll be going over geospatial analysis using R, and we'll be using the Flowful package. So if anyone's interested in statistical seminars, January 27th. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yes, let's clap for everyone. I'm kidding. Yeah. Mr. Weissman.
Hi, I'm Mark Weissman. I'm one of the founders of Data DC, also organizer of Staff Program DC and Data Science DC. Tomorrow we have an event. If you guys haven't registered, you should come. It's with the Kaggle CEO. Who here knows about Kaggle? So a lot of you do. For those that don't, Kaggle is it's a company that's been hosting data science competitions online, and they've hosted all sorts of competitions over the years. Anthony, the CEO, is going to come talk tomorrow about what they have learned, looking at about over 2 million models that people have submitted. That's completed over the course of time, and just kind of talk about what's new in state machine learning. So it's going to be a really great talk. It's going to be here at 6:30. Sign up. We've got close to 400 RSVPs. Hopefully, you guys are here. Number one. Number two, next week, there's going to be a meetup on RM by F next Tuesday evening here at GW. And third is I'm with Booz Allen. Booz Allen is looking for folks. If you're interested, come talk to me. Thank you.
Awesome. Now you're like, man, should I really get up? Do I want to? Yes.
Well, I also am a database. I'm also looking for a position in data science and analysis. I work with programming, Java.NET, Macros, then I did an MBA here and the certification in analytics for the same department that ran the master data analytics. So I use a lot of SAS, R, and Python. And so I just graduated recently and I'm looking to apply this.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Who's next? Travis.
So, if you like the subversive nature of this talk, this black hat data wrangling, I run my own meetup, and it's called Hack&Tell. And the next one's coming up next Tuesday. It's with the regular meetup schedule. I won't talk about it now because this is your gig tonight.
Promote your stuff. It's fun.
But Hack&Tell is show and tell for hackers. Everybody gets 5 minutes and then we cut them off. Doesn't matter how big, how small. We usually have 5 to 10 presenters, and it's pretty amazing what people know. So check it out.
Cool. Thank you, Travis. Hi. Anyone else? Is there no one else? All right, cool. Yes. Oh, come on, get up. You know you want class. Come on.
I work with Power Data Solutions. We're a software development consultancy out in Boston. I work with firms in finance, some other firms in technology, healthcare, energy, name it, doing other full stack development, especially with some web development areas. We're looking to hire developers, junior through performance.
Cool. Thank you very much. Let's also do this. If your company is hiring, and when this is over, like something I've seen them do at other data meetups, if y'all can come up like onto the stage, and then if you're looking for a job, then you can connect with the people that are looking for people to fill said jobs. That would be awesome, and then we can connect. And also, if you do have jobs, the DC2 newsletter, you can post jobs there as well, and so that gets to the entire data community, DC community, which is like about 10,000 people. So it's a really targeted list. It's even more. What is it? 20?
About
15?
16,
17,000 people. Right on. So we have all the awesome data people. Yeah, in the community. So there you go. All right. So speaking of upcoming meetups, I'm lining something up for February. In March, we have a talk on how to find and mitigate rare catastrophic events. So like black swan events, that should be pretty interesting. And then we're looking for talks after that. So again, please, the community, you all need talks. I've spoken with a couple of y'all about potential talks. So if you have one that you want to do, come talk to me. We'll line it up. And I promise this is almost over. District Data Labs has a number of workshops upcoming. Fast Data, Apps with Spark, and Python. Web scraping with Python, I think that one's awesome. I'm doing that one. But that's cool. And then building data apps with Python as well. And then there's, they have a whole lot of webinars and other things as well. If you're looking for workshops. I started another meetup called Data Science Studio User Group. I'm not going to really tell you much about that right here, but it's on Meetup. And then that gets to Travis and myself, Black Hat Data Wrangling. So I'm not going to reintroduce myself because that's pretty freaking lame. But Travis here, Travis and I met, and he was like, hey, are you going to introduce me and tell people how we met? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, how did we meet, man? It's been like forever. So Travis, this was what, the first meetup? The first meetup that he ever went to. And he did an awesome talk called Pie Parsing. It was like helping data get its sexy back. So that was awesome. Very well attended event. So Travis, tell the folks about yourself. You got that, or just yell?
Yeah, I like meetup. You guys can't hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. No, actually, so I mentioned this. I run the Hack&Tell organization, and what I love about Hack&Tell is people take really common ideas and really well understood concepts and try to mess with them. They try to hack them and turn them inside out. And data wrangling, while incredibly useful, and while very good for the corporate world, for the journalists, for everybody else, it's kind of boring, right? Like you're data wrangling, like you're getting data, you're munching it, you're making this. Like, how can we subvert data wrangling? So like, let's do a black hat data wrangler. And it took me a while to figure out what that meant. And that was, I talked to Robert, he said, we should do a talk together. And first he asked me, how do you do a talk together? So you're gonna say, we're gonna tag team this talk, like WWF style, where we go in between the hacks. Where we came up with 12 hacks for black hat data wrangling. I'm just gonna jump right into it. But the slides for all this will be posted up on the meetup. So you'll be able to click through the hacks and see them. You can copy and paste the code. But all the slides, they're already up there online. You guys should check it out. At the end, if you think of some really cool black hat data wrangling hacks, I'd love for you to tweet them to me. So that's Robert's and I's Twitter accounts. So, oh no.
You see how slide on this.
this. I know. I need you to don't you stall.
Stall? I'm stalling. All right. I am. We'll go like, you know. Going into the dark.
Read some data.
Oh God, that makes me, for some reason, that triggered a memory of, we do these like monthly all hands on deck meetings at my job, and one of the speakers that they made us sit through came and, God bless her soul, she had a PowerPoint presentation, and so she had her laptop up, and she would read the PowerPoint presentation and then look up every once in a while, and then like stop talking, and then go back and keep reading the PowerPoint presentation and look up, and that was awesome. That like we got to make paper photos, so win. So yeah, everyone's laughing at that. Have y'all never seen anyone like the awesome that is someone just reading a PowerPoint presentation? Or are you like, damn, I did that? Yes.
Awesome stalling.
All right.
So. Okay, so you have these data wranglers, these terrible people, and they want your data. This is the premise of Black Hat data wranglers, right? They want to steal all this data that you have, and you want to stop them. But you can't stop a data wrangler, right? Anybody who's out here and who's sitting in this audience who actively does this, you're like, yes, that's a challenge. You're gonna hide your data from me? But you can slow them down, right? You can make their lives miserable. You can make their lives the worst possible thing. So let's figure out how we can possibly do this to your beautiful data wrangler. But what is the difference between a black hat data wrangler and a white hat data wrangler? And I use these terms because they show up in pop culture, black hats and white hats. And the idea is that a white hat is an ethical type of person, a person who's using their skills and computer skills for good, for improving. This is the journalist who will go out and maybe download a whole bunch of data and then compile some story and they change the world with this, right? Like this is the white hat data man. Or like you guys who pull data together and you have this national registry. Good things can come from that, right? And so this meetup is designed for white hat data wranglers, right? It's designed to teach you guys how to do some data wrangling. And there's all sorts of organizations that exist. You know, what if you don't want people to have data, right? So these are your black hat data wranglers, right? These are your corporations, your politicians, or does anybody know what this symbol is? Yes, right? From Resident Evil, it's the evil corporation that caused all the horrible mutants to come out, right? So what if you're in corporate finance, or you have some political donations and you have to publish, and you publish these things, or you have this Freedom of Information Act, and you don't really want to do that whole Freedom of Information Act, but there are laws, right? So what if you have to be this sort of thing, right? So why not just disconnect completely from the internet, right? But sometimes you have to be a part of the internet, and so there are rules that are set up. And so when you need a black hat data wrangler, when you need one of these people to come work for your organization, right? If it's a small amount of data, right? It's just, you could just make it really inaccessible. This is a large amount of data. If it's small, they can print it out and then you're done, right? If it's one page, you can't hide that if you have to make it public. So we're talking like gigs of data or large amounts of data that one person reasonably couldn't print out, right? The data, you have to make it public, right? Because it's public, data wrangler is going to come out and try to organize it in some useful sort of way. And humans have to read it. Right, you could make it 1-point font, some terrible sort of thing, but you're probably breaking the law, right? You're probably breaking the reason why it has to be public in the first place. And if you're really good, the normal user shouldn't know this is happening. So, right, your politician can come up there and be like, yeah, he's following the law completely. Like, look, you can see this as a human. But when you come in there with your computers and you try to scrape the site, all hell breaks loose, right? So this is when you need a black hat data wrangler. And so I realized we came up with 12 hats, and we need completely arbitrary systems of grading these hats. And so these are my 100% arbitrary grading scales. We have the implementation, and the implementation is whether or not it's hard for you to actually do this in your organization, in your evil empire, what have you, right? And they range from easy things you could probably do by reading on the net in 5 minutes. Medium, it's like, maybe a couple years of experience, you can do this. Hard is really kind of subtle, and this last category is, you'll see when they come up. You have defense, and that's really how much of a defense it gives you. Yeah, it may look like it's a really good defense, but if you're a good data wrangler, you can get around it pretty well. And the hack level is kind of how I organize the talk in terms of how complicated these things get. And script kiddie is this idea that it's really a derogatory name for someone who just downloads something on the internet, has no idea what it does, and they run. These are these kids, these hackers. They're called script kiddies, right? Corporate is like your standard industrial level hack. And then for the really fun hacks, I call them the Hollywood level hacks, right? They're the things that you don't actually see in the real world, but if you do, you'd be really impressed, right? And so these are the 12 hacks that we have going for us. And I told you it was going to be a tag team talk. And this is our, we're going to kind of switch between Travis and Rob, that's the team we are, between these hacks. And it should go pretty smoothly between them. So we have a lot to cover. And so I'm just going to dive right into it. Okay. So that's the format, the setup. Now let's dive into black hat number 1. And I wanted to start off with a really simple thing that everybody's probably seen, right? You've got your friend's baby photos, they're so cute, and you want to right-click and save them, but this stupid website won't let you do that, right? And so you look at this and you throw your hands up, you're like, oh gosh, I can't steal this. I wish I had a data wrangler, right? And so I wanted to introduce this as the first black hat because it's so easy and everybody's seen this. And by easy, I literally mean you put this piece of JavaScript inside your HTML, inside your web page, and boom, you've got the anti-right-click mechanism. There are more complicated ways of doing this by having CSS overlays, so you cannot right-click to save a picture because there's no picture. There's this empty box. And when you click, it grabs the box and not the picture. These are things you can do, but you notice the defense is pretty weak. So we have this as black hat number 1. But we are at data wranglers, right? So I want to give for every black hat thing a white hat attack, right? So if this happens, what can you do to change? What can you do to help your situation? And in this case, you can pretty much do anything other than right click, right? You can press F12, and if you've never pressed F12 on any modern browser, you'll be amazed. You could do pretty much anything, right? You can delete elements, you can change web pages, you can show your mom you hacked the internet by putting your name in some web page and injecting it. That's really simple stuff. You can just turn off JavaScript, and that'll do it for this case. Or you can use a headless or mobile browser, because those don't recognize these kind of JavaScript sort of things. And so this is a really easy attack, but it's a really good way to get us into these white hat and black hat attacks.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. All right, so minification is another one of these really simplistic things to do. You may have seen this if you ever look at the source code of Google or something. Although Google does some other stuff that we'll talk about a little later. But the implementation of this is super easy. It's a weak-ass defense, and you can get around it extremely easily. It's basically like using your text editor and a couple of plugins for your text editor. So if you use Sublime Text, basically all we're talking about here is removing the comments, white space, other things. So it just jams it all together and makes it this unreadable mess. I've seen this a lot with CSS files, especially when I'm trying to say make a website look like another website. I don't want to say copy, right? Because it's not really copy, but do that. So also JavaScript gets minified. JavaScript though will get minified, generally speaking, especially on mobile sites, so that the pages load faster. So that's something you always see with JavaScript. In fact, if you're not minifying your JavaScript as a web object, it's not good. So do that. But anyway, there's a Ruby wrapper for this. So basically, it takes that first nicely structured HTML and then just turns it into some giant line mess. And now I figured out how to use the clicker. Okay, so how do we deal with this really easily? Just deminify the HTML. So there's a couple online tools. One is called Unminified. There's JS Beautifier. So you just copy and paste it in, and it'll just make it readable for you again. Or if you're using a text editor, like I use Sublime Text, there's this thing called HTML tidy, which makes it, again, nicely structured, everything's nested, etc. Or you can automate it. There's a library called JS Beautifier, and I mean, literally, there you go, like 2 lines, right? You pip install JS beautifier, it's a Python package, and then you just say beautify this file, and then you're good to go.
So on these slides, if these things look like links, they are links, right? So I encourage you to go through if you want to actually click through and see what these things do. All those links, like the ones on the previous slide, you could go through and check out if this thing interests you. Click through it. And if you can't find it, because that website's not on there, you can search for my name, and it's one of my GitHub repositories, Travis Hoppy. But just so if you want to follow along, and the slides are up there too. Number 3, this is the first reasonable type of attack you could make against data wranglers. Right? And this is something that you might not be able to do because you might not be able to set up some kind of security layer. And the idea is that you can have an authentication layer in front of your data. And this is actually a pretty strong defense, but it's pretty obvious. So this slide's kind of at the beginning of the talk. And there are 2 ways to set up an authentication layer. You could have what's really common right now is a RESTful API, where you have an API and you have a whole authentication token, and you authorize with this token, and you can control the data limits. You actually see how the data is being used. But the reason why that's a black hat attack is because has anybody gone through the OAuth 2 process for anything? Yes. Does it suck? It sucks. It's just like, man, that's anywhere from 10 to 2 hours of my life that I'm never going to get back. And every time I do it, it seems like I forgot everything that I learned about this. And so while it's not going to stop anybody, I've stopped taking tests. I'm like, God, again, I don't want to do this, right? So you can set up some authentication layer for your RESTful API. But if you don't have a RESTful API, you can kind of be old school and set up this sessions environment where you keep track of the data that the person is using, and you can use that and you can log this data through cookies, and then try to record and limit the data through this. But it's not very good because almost all the data that you're using, you're probably keeping at client side. And if you're not, it can be dangerous. And it's really kind of the bad way to do it because a poorly designed session state, you can denial of service your own server if you keep a lot of data. And the reason why I say denial of service is if you have somebody scraping your site and they're not polite, they can make tens to hundreds to thousands of hits per second on your website. And if you're storing session data and they're cycling their identity, man, you're going to have a bad time, right? So this is probably not a good black hat. So the way to get around this authentication, we're going to see more of this as we go on, is that you can create a browser that changes its identity as it goes through. So when you log on to a website, it says, you're using Mozilla Firefox, this is your screen resolution, this is your this is your this. We all know that when we see a website. And so there are ways of faking that, and they're not very hard to fake. But it's getting up on a level of sophistication. So you can change your session ID that will get around all of your old school PHP sessions. And if you really need to get around some authentication because you have a RESTful API, then you could just create multiple accounts, right? So you're going to have to combine it with something a little bit more sophisticated to really stop that at this point.
So, talking about denying or DOSing. Let's sort of say that. Right. So we're talking now data and time limits. So it's getting we start getting a little bit more complicated with this because there's more things you have to track, just more you have to implement. And essentially, what this means is that you are detecting like high download rates or unusual traffic patterns coming from an IP address. So the way that I've seen a lot of this happen is you can rate limit individual IP addresses or a specific ID. I've seen a lot of services like this background check service that we have does that. You can delay content delivery, and you can also just start returning like error codes at the people if you wanted to as well. However, this stuff is also, well, at least for some of us, kind of child's play to start getting around. Basically, as Travis was alluding to on the last slide, you can start cycling your IP address. And the way that you do that is you just use VPN software that will do that automatically for you. So I've done things like that. It works out really well. You just have to kind of time your code so that when it's switching from one connection to another, it doesn't also like just keep going and start pulling web pages. Also, you can use something called Tor, which is like this onion network. So it basically routes your traffic through also encrypted through multiple routers. So basically, by the time your traffic pops out at the end of this network and grabs whatever web page, like there's no way that well, just about. I've heard they can, but there's almost no way that they can trace it back. But the point is they just keep changing your IP address as you go. I will tell you though, Tor is depending kind of slow. So VPN proxy server software, awesome. The one that I use is called Hide My Ass, and it's great because they have servers literally like all over the world. So you could have your traffic go from Miami to Cuba to wherever the hell you really want to. It's pretty cool. Also, one of the things that I suggest you do anyway when you're web scraping is slow down your scraper. So you want to throttle it. It's just not nice to denial of service a website, even though a lot of people don't put this measure even into place. It's just kind of impolite to make it harder for other people to get there. So I use a Python framework called Scrapey, and they have auto throttle built in. You can also write your own custom code for timing all the calls that your scraper is doing as well. And then also Scrapey has this great thing where you can start changing your user agent as well. So there's ways in Python or Ruby, whatever, so that every call that your code is making has a different user agent. When I say user agent, that means like how your browser identifies itself to the website. So this, so I used to do a lot of online marketing. This kind of drives me nuts as an online marketer because I could have all of these IP address, like traffic from all over the world and all these different web browsers, and it's complete bullshit because it's like one person sitting in their basement, right? Like with VPN software. So my web analytics get totally thrown off. But still, you can implement all of this with custom Python code.
Question on the VPN.
Yeah.
You basically just get a set of IPs, like a dozen IPs, or you get like a truly large number of IPs? Like,
so with at least like with the HMA software, so you can install it on really like anything. So Mac, Linux, Windows. So the way that I've had it set up is I would just have it on a timed basis, just flip like to a totally separate VPN connection. And so each time you connect to a different VPN server, it gives you a completely brand new IP address. And so, so like one request you're coming from Miami, and then the next request you could be coming from the other side of the country, and then they have literally hundreds of servers all over the world. So if you time it right, then you're good to go, and it'll flip automatically for you.
Do you program that in code, or do you just set that into GUI?
No, you set that. So the Linux one is like all command line, so you basically feed it like a config file, and you say rotate, and there's basically it's like a rotate variable, and you just tell it how often to rotate. Otherwise, the GUIs do you just do it in GUI. But again, the thing is there will be some lag between when it disconnects and when it picks up another VPN connection. So it's there that you kind of have to like time your code to like take a pause at kind of the same time that the VPN connection is flipping over. Otherwise, it's going to be all of a sudden your IP address that they're seeing. But that might not really be a big deal, depending on how well you've throttled your scraper. I mean, if you're like tearing it apart, which shouldn't, then that could be a problem. And then, but although like 5 to 10 seconds later, it's pretty quick. It's like maybe 7 to 10 seconds for it to flip off one connection onto another, or less, like 5. So really, that might not be an issue.
I do want to say one thing. If you're going to implement this in your own organization, you have to be really careful. This is really easy to mess up. Large organizations sometimes have only one IP. In fact, there are some countries with only one IP. And Wikipedia finds this out because you get one idiot from that country They do things, and they ban that IP address. You block Wikipedia for the entire country. So blocking IPs can be dangerous and block larger groups of users. Like a college dorm often only has a few IPs associated with it. And there are lots of stupid kids in college dorms. So you need to be careful when you're doing this, because remember, you don't want to shut out the legitimate users, just the ones you don't like.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quick story. So when I first got hired at my current job, I got hired to do inbound marketing. And I did that like for 3 months and then I got canned. But anyway, so I had some SEO software that would basically go out to Google and emulate a person, grab the web page and look at the actual links to try and get your rankings. Yeah, so that worked pretty quick. Like I forgot to throttle it, and all of a sudden I got calls from IT of like, hey, the partners in the company are getting these captchas from Google. What the hell? And I was like, oh yeah. And so then I got shit for that for like 6 months. Because like anytime anyone had a problem, they were like, oh Rob, you scraping web pages, scan them. So there you go. Luckily I didn't have a partner come down. That would have been an issue. All right, so number 5, rendering to images. Let's see this. This is kind of fun. So this is more of a medium level thing. Fairly strong defense, just because to get the text out of the image is a bit more of a pain in the butt. So yeah, hack level corporate. Again, you're talking custom programming at this point. So essentially, you just need a library that will render out your text as an image. So there's a bunch of different stuff you can use. PHP has libraries like text-to-image or image magic. I found out in the course of research, you could actually just draw text onto an HTML5 canvas using JavaScript. So it looks just like text, but it ain't text when you try and pull it off. But you can use the HTML5, just the canvas element to do this. So if your website's already in HTML5, you implement this, and it renders it out as an image, but it loads wicked fast, and it's just like plain text, which is pretty cool. So how do you get around that? Well, you can use OCR software, depending on how that image was rendered. Adobe Acrobat, you can basically, another way that's even a bit more roundabout and pain in the ass is you can convert the image to a PDF, and then you do OCR on that. Python has a library called Acrobus, and then there's this Tesseract open source OCR engine as well. So using things like the Python library and Tesseract, you would be able to create more of an automated solution to do the OCR, which depending on how much stuff you're trying to get, is definitely the way that you want to go.
So this one's kind of fun. This is the thing that you've seen now. It was like the new hotness a couple years ago. You scroll down a page and the new content comes up. You scroll down a page, new content comes up. I think it was Tumblr had this a while ago, and Pinterest does this. It's like this never-ending scroll of content. This is great if you like this scrolling thing going on, and it looks like a browser. But man, it's really hard to scrape that, right? Because there's not a consistent thing that's coming out, right? It's not pages. So when you see in the URL, you can't see the URL, but the URL, sometimes you see extra information in there. It's like question mark, this thing. That tells you, it's like a RESTful API, and sometimes it's like page 1, page 2, page 3. I love that, because I can scrape the heck out of that. I just increment the pages. But these kind of things, they're really irritating, because sometimes they don't load unless there's JavaScript. Or it's this really irritating AJAX, which is this asynchronous JavaScript. So I actually have to pretend to be a browser to do this. That sucks, right? And this is actually why the defense is a pretty decent defense. It's not as good as rendering the images, because that's terrible, right? Like, if it's in an image, then it's a lot of work. But with this, you actually have to go a lot further to make this scrolling thing happen like you're a real user. Now, the problem with this, right, is that there's been a lot of studies on this sort of thing. with the Tumblr style, Dribble uses it too. And these studies basically say users freaking hate it, right? Some people like it, but it frustrates the user because they really have no control. They can't see where they are in a situation. Enough so that finding things like this aren't really hard to find, right? And people hate this infinite scroll, especially people who do web design for a living. So if you want to actually create a website that is, that looks like this, yeah, you go ahead, but you need to keep this in mind, right? And how can you get around this? It's not that hard, but it's a real big pain in the ass. Because now you cannot just use a simple headless browser. And I've been using this word, headless browser. What a headless browser means is you make a request to the web server serves you back raw data, and you're cool with that, because you can work with this. But in this case, you actually have to open up Firefox, click on this, and scroll down. And you can do that. And there's a couple tools. Selenium is actually pretty neat for it. It literally will send the commands to Chrome, or send the commands to Firefox, or Safari, and actually click on the things you tell it to. But that's slow, right? So you have to load up the web browser, you have to go through, you have to click, you have to load all the CSS, all the HTML, all the JavaScript, just like a normal browser would, and that really slows people down. So this is actually a pretty decent defense. You just have to have this terrible, terrible user interface.
Yeah, I hate that stuff, man. And more and more websites, I know it's like news websites are, doing that infinite scroll. And I'm like, well, I want to get to the about links on the bottom. So what the hell? And you can never get to them. It's infuriating. But anyway, yeah, I do Selenium. It is awesome. You can fully automate. It's meant for automated user acceptance testing, but that's maybe whatever. It's all good. All right, so black hat number 7, watermarking. This is something that's actually fairly easy to do. There are so many software packages that will automatically watermark images. Again, you could use some of the PHP libraries would do it. There's other libraries that'll add a watermark, not just to images, but also to non-images as well. So things like PDFs. But images are really a lot of what people will try and do online. Some things are easier to remove than others. So on the left is definitely easier to remove than the right, just because the watermark is on top of just a lot more stuff that you have to deal with. But we can deal with this. So there are simple ways, and then there's more complex ways. So depending on where the watermark is, maybe you can just crop the image. So sometimes people will put and I'm not saying to do this, but I'm just saying you could. So there will be a copyright such and such in the bottom right corner, or maybe the top left. Oh man, that didn't show up. Oh, it's all good. So let's just say you see an image, and it has someone's copyright on the top and the bottom. You can basically just crop the image, and as long as it doesn't mess with the whole image, then you get to go there. There's also this $20 program called InPaint that allows you to basically click on the watermark, then you click another button that says restore, and then boom, it's gone. So while not automated, it is a $20 app that can remove watermarks from pretty much any image there is. So crazy. Then there's the more complex removal. So if you're a Photoshop wizard, there's this thing called content-aware fill, which basically just kind of looks at what's surrounding the watermark and fills in the watermark with what's surrounding it. So that's a more complex thing, which we'll make sure that that's up so you can see that.
So the next one. This is when we start getting really, really interesting. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this. So watermarking, everybody see, right? You see these images. And how many people, just show of hands, have tried to remove a watermark? All of them.
We're not going to tell on you. It's okay.
Right? I mean, it's like a thing you do. I ran this freaking marathon. I don't want to pay $100 more for this photo where I'm like this, right? So you try to crop yourself out, right? So that's what we do. So all of these hacks that you've seen, these black hat hacks, are obvious to the user to slow them down. We want to slow down the data wrangling. Let's change gears. What if you don't want to slow down the data? What if you put up rules saying, if you use my website improperly, I will sue you, or you're breaking the law? But you put your data out there. This is the idea of a honeypot. You want to see who's scraping your data. So what we're going to do instead of creating a barrier in front of your data, we're going to track who is ripping our data, and then maybe go after them, because that's a suitably black hat thing to do. So we're going to give away our data, but we're going to taint it in such a way that I'm going to be able to see who's doing this. And there's a lot of ways to do this. And even more awesomely is that if we notice somebody has gone into our honeypot and they're pulling too much data, we're still going to give them data. It's just not going to be the right data anymore. Or it's going to be corrupted data. Or it's going to be false data. So like the real users, they're going to see the correct things, but we're going to feed them false data, right? And how can we do this? Oh man, this is fun, right? So for images, which are pretty good, there's a lot of metadata that's hidden within images. If you've ever taken a photo and then looked at it under Photoshop or GIF or anything else, there's all this extra data in EXIF. And you can hide all sorts of things in here. I just took an image off of Flickr, and there's literally like 8 pages of information on this guy's camera and this guy's photo aperture and all sorts of things. And I can put any field I want into there. So anything I want, I can put my copyright information, I can put a unique identifier, I can put your IP address in this. That's not very interesting or complicated, right? Because you can see that. You can do something else though. You could do something like stenography. And stenography is hiding something within something else, right? And so this little piece of Python that I wrote right here takes the panda and converts it into this panda. You notice anything different about this? No, because there's probably less than 1/1000th of a pixels of the total pixels have been changed, and only by a few bits. But the images are different. If you look at the checksums of these two images, they're totally new pandas. Which means when I serve new panda to IP address so-and-so, I can keep track of this MP5 sum, this checksum right here, and I know exactly who I sent this panda to. So that's pretty cool, right? Because now I can keep track of all these things in my secret database, and I can go after somebody later. This is good, but it's not great. And it's not great because all you have to do is resize this, or change it to a slightly different format, or make one small alteration, and this is going to be changed. And so there's some really, I don't have time to get into this, but there's really good ways of putting some actual data in there that are going to be resilient to image changes and all sorts of things. But the more you mess with it, the more you can actually start to alter the image. I just want to give you a flavor of literally how easy it is to set this up, right? And so if your scrapers aren't going to be very smart about it, and they're not going to rescale your images, it's going to work really well. This was like, what is that? It's literally like 10 lines of Python, which is fun. And it doesn't have to be just images. Anytime you have lossy data, right? So, or data that you can subtly alter, that's very dense data like images or audio, you can put some little filter in there. You can change it in inaudible or invisible sort of ways, and then you'll be able to essentially stamp this piece of data. And there are ways of doing this. There are studied ways of doing this, hiding bits within audio and bits within video. So you can do this with all sorts of things. You could do this within data sets too. So let's say your data is this relational SQL table, right? Well, if you notice somebody's scraping through all your data here, you could start adding fields. You could add a row that doesn't exist in everybody else's table, but it exists in this one because he's gone into your honeypot, right? And then you can keep track if this data set has this in there, you've noted him for term of service violations. So you can put this in there, or you can be really, really evil and then start poisoning the data. Start putting false data, right? Let's say if it's Freedom of Information Act sort of things, and this is stuff that makes your company look really bad. Start feeding them data that makes your company look really good, right? And then when somebody else goes to verify, the reporter publishes it and says all these things, you're like, no, that's not true. Look at the data. The data's right here. You were just making something up, right? So you can poison them well once you've identified them as somebody who is digging into your data. So this is a really fun, evil thing that you can do. We'll do the next one.
Excuse me. What
Yes.
about least significant bits?
Say again?
Least significant bits.
So this is this idea with the checksum that I showed you, is that there is a really easy way to put your data, to alter the data, and then you completely change the least significant bit. You change the checksum of your data. There are more complicated ways that I'm not talking about to actually embed an image, embed data into your image such that it will change.
I mean, the problem is to tell that they've done it. I mean, some people use it as a form of encryption.
Sure, right, and this is a whole interesting field. right? That I love to dive into it. The idea is not whether or not you can and the depth that you can do it. The idea is that we're using it for nefarious purposes, right? And so this is to introduce people to this horrible art of doing this sort of things. But yes, you can certainly use it for encryption, all sorts of interesting things. And it's a whole field. It's really fascinating, actually. Now, how do you get around this, right? And this is a real world problem I had, because I actually download a lot of data from everywhere. I don't know how many, some people know, right? I download data all the time that we've banned from a lot of websites, right? So I notice things. I notice barriers people put up. In Science Magazine, I tried to download Science Magazine. You know the journal of science? I tried to download that multiple times. And I've gotten it, but I've noticed their PDFs, they're starting to tag their PDFs. There's metadata in their PDFs, this string. And this string, I don't know what it is, because it's just this random string of characters, but it's probably this hack in the wild. It's probably associated on some table with the IP address and the license I use to download this PDF. So this is already in the wild. But you can get around that, because all you have to do is download it from multiple sources, download it from 3 places, find out where it changes, especially if it's like a PDF, which is structured data, and then write a little parser to strip that piece out. Or just download it from multiple sources and see if it's different. Because if it's different, they're messing with you. If it's not different, you know, it's the exact same thing from multiple places with IP addresses, then you're probably okay in this sort of attack. So you can write sanitizers and get around this, but it takes a lot of work and it takes foresight to get around this. This is a really subtle, really awesome hack. We'll do the next one.
Actually, Travis, before you move on, man, do you have I think you showed me a PDF where it was a story, but if you like copy and paste, like what you copy and paste out of the PDF is different than the text that you copy. Oh, okay, right, yeah. But y'all have to see that. That is like, it's wicked cool. So grab Travis after this.
This is here.
Oh, okay, right on.
You can tell we really practice this. Okay. So this one, God, this one's just sanity reducing, right? It's really not good to design a website like this. But man, if you remove the markup metadata, you can make a scraper's life terrible, right? If your website looks like this is a real website. Click on this, because if you click on this, there are animated GIFs on this website too. This is a static, not a static thing. And if you try to scrape the source of this, it literally layers these things all on top of each other in no coherent way. It's amazing, right? I would hate to scrape this. There's probably some way to do it, right? There's probably some rule that comes out with it. But there is no metadata. This is the biggest mess. And what do I mean by metadata, right? See this? You can tell what video game I'm playing if you really know what's going on here. But if this is markup with nice metadata. It says that this is an author, this is a first name, this is the last name. I love this, right? Because then I can just write a parser and I can essentially use these fields and go right into it. We don't want to serve that to the client, right? Because it's going to look the same either way. We want to put it with things like this where we've removed all of this extra information. And this is a really terrible way to design a website. It is probably the worst way to design a website. The reason why we have things like class and ID is to make our lives easier as web designers, right? Right? Anybody? Yes. So, but if you remove all that, then it makes it a lot harder to scrape. So it's actually a pretty decent attack. So you see this when somebody uses a really, really lazy content management system. But there are ways around it. So this particular example I showed you, how do you get back the information? Well, you have to write your own rules. You have to say, okay, I'm splitting them by lines, by like BR, and then I'm splitting them by spaces, right? So you have to write a custom rule for every single thing you see, and that works. It just sucks, and it slows me down, and I don't want to do it. So it's a pretty decent hack. In fact, it's only a couple lines, but this took me just as long to write as it did for the pandas thing. Right? So it's, you know, when I have the pandas, put the images up there. So it's a decent hack to put up on it.
Awesome. Love pandas. All right, HTML obfuscation. So this is something pretty, I mean, this is pretty easy, but it can be infuriating. So you can literally encode all of your text in HTML character codes, and you can also just insert like random HTML, which is pretty awesome. So you can start with this, it just says, hey, this is a string of text. And then you encode it to this crap, right, which is to a human meaningless. You put that into an HTML page, and when you view source, you see it like that. So, I mean, what are you going to do with that? And you would have to know that actually those are HTML character codes to even know what to do with it in the first place. So that's pretty awesome. But again, it's not that difficult to get around this stuff. So there's a few ways. Again, I love using the Selenium WebDriver to basically create a headless browser, open the page, take a screenshot of the page, and then you just OCR that sucker, which is one way to do it. Or you can also capture the entire page and then decode the HTML characters using Beautiful Soup, the Python library. So literally it's like .unencode or something simple like that, where it automatically decodes the HTML for you. So pretty simple to get around. Serving HTML as PDF, I haven't seen this way too much, because I imagine if you started serving your entire website as a PDF, people would hate you. And they would talk about that on social media. But you can do it. So if you wanted to, there's some very not so easy ways to do it. But you basically convert all your text to PDF using something like Phantom.js, WK-HTML to PDF, or PDFKit, which is for Node.js. The reason that the implementation of that is hard is that you're really talking custom coding, basically at this point. Yeah, I don't know what the heck that was right there. But anyway, another way is to get around this is you just use OCR to extract text and images from the text. And there's also this great little tool called Tabula. So if you're trying to like turn a table into a PDF and just give that out, too bad, like Tabula, I can suck it into Tabula and it automatically says, oh, here's the little tables, and then I'll pull out all the data and turn it into a spreadsheet. There's also Chrome extensions. Yeah, no, well, no, not for PDFs, but mainly I'd say just use Tabula.
And Tabula is a command line tool.
Yes. Yeah, so you can either use it in your web browser or just call it and then automate that whole part. And now, I love this one. This is one I was like almost giving away the bank on.
So this is the last one, but it's broken up into 3 different things. And only the last one is the Hollywood level hack. So don't ever think these two are that amazing. But they're neat if you've never seen them. This one is like our right-clicking one. This one is like the HTML station one, and this is a Hollywood level hack. But the idea is going back to all of these things that we've been talking about, right? You want to display to the user the right data, but you really want to hide to the machine everything else, right? So how do we go about doing this? So this is actually kind of neat, is that I'm going to actually try to do something live. Actually, I don't have internet connection on this, but there's a JS fiddle for this. And so what this actually does is it shows text on the screen. So if you click on this live, you can see what's going on. But if this is a little piece of JavaScript, and if this lives on your page, and you select some text and go to copy it, you go to paste it somewhere else, it literally changes what pops out. That's kind of fun, right? It's cute. It's cute because it's JavaScript, meaning anybody scraping your web page isn't going to see it. It's not going to work. It's like your right-click thing, right? It's going to stop grandma from doing this, unless grandma's a data wrangler, and she's just going to be like, "What? This is nothing," right? So this is cute, but it kind of introduces this idea. Next one is a little bit fun, and this is really, really fun. What does this say to you as humans? It says Travis, right? I think it says Travis, but I'm going to do something with it. So can you see the URL? How many users says in text? You guys can see the URL, right? Yes?
Yeah.
It's kind of small. But I'm copying this, and I'm pasting this. There's no trickery here. What just came out? I didn't do anything. This is literally how this web page is structured. How did I do that? Right? This would make my life pretty miserable if I saw this. But really, this is what it actually looks like. This is what the source actually is if you look at this. It's TRA. And hidden beneath it, interleaved between these things, are these awful little span elements, which are just pieces of structured HTML, but they're positioned like way over there, and so you can't see them. And they have all this garbage, but your browser doesn't know that these things aren't visible, so we can copy and paste this sort of thing. You like select this, it's going to be all this. And if you're writing like a parser and you're going through here, you're going to be like, cool, code block. I want to scrape that piece of data. And you're going to find it through the HTML, and you're going to go and you're going to select all the text, and you're like, ah, you're going to get all this horrible stuff that's in there. Again, that's cute, right? Because the moment you see that, you're going to be like, ah, this guy, again, right? And you're going to find all these spans, and you're going to be like, all right, you're just going to remove all the spans. Because they're going to follow some rule that are going to be there. You can combine them together and be really evil and change what the span looks like, but they're still going to be spans, right? So you got to put them in there. You can combine all your tricks, but they're pretty easy to put in there. And you can combine all sorts of things. If you just want to not stop your data wrangler, but you want to make them feel guilty for taking all your beautiful data, you can put messages in here. So the first time they copy and paste and the first time they take it, you can have your message say, what you're doing is illegal, or I think it is. You know, anything you want. But again, this is cute. This one's so much fun. Okay, this is the last thing I want to show you guys today. This is a PDF. Anytime I'm so against doing things live, they're always going to fail. This one works. Okay, so this is a PDF. I'll probably publish the library soon enough, but I wrote this, right? Does anybody know how PDFs actually work? Who's talking to like PDF specifications and sorts? Anybody? A couple people. Yeah, PostScript counts, right? They're actually a Turing-complete language, right? You can do computations on it. I wrote a fractal PDF, right? Because it was only like 3K, and it would crash Google Docs. So many fun things you can do with PDFs. But PDFs contain a lot of government data, right? If you downloaded, forms, they keep them in PDFs. So this is a really legitimate hack, right? What you can do, see this text? This looks like normal text. This follows all our rules. A user can read this text. And if I go and I select this text, and then I try to paste it, I get garbage. This is not a web page. These aren't hidden spans. My PDF is lying to me. So good luck with your PDF software that's going to pull the text out, because the text is lying. And you can go backwards too. If you want to have hidden encoded messages, you see that garbage? Oh, I got that. And if you're really, really paying attention, you'll notice that the letters here, this like W, T, A, E, B, they don't match the same letters that are on there. So you're like, oh yeah, it's a one-time pad. No, it's so hard. Or it's just a simple encryption. No, you can make it a one-time pad. It's pretty neat. So how do I do this, right? So a PDF specification works like this. At the very end of the PDF is a bunch of definitions, and these definitions are like the letter A looks like this. It's a bunch of Bezier curves and lines. And the letter B looks like this. Actually, they don't even say A and B. They say character code A is what this is. Character code B is what this is. And it's some number corresponding either to the UTF specification or whatever. And then it says, draw the thing I'm telling you is an A at this XY coordinate. Draw the B here, draw the C here, draw the D here. And it spaces them all out. Literally, that's what's going on. And the PDF reader has to interpret that and say, okay, there's an A you're telling me to draw here. I see that's an A. Okay, there's a B here, there's a C here. And so when I highlight them, I can draw the boxes and do this sort of thing. Nobody says you got to tell the truth, right? So when you say an A is an A, you just lie. And you say this A is a Q, and this Q is a P, and this X is a Y, and all sorts of things. And so when you go and copy and paste it, you see letters, but the PDF is lying to what those letters actually are. It's really fun. And what's kind of cool about this, you're like, yeah, I mentioned this, right? If it was only one font, right? This is kind of like changing the font, but you're not really. You're changing the PDF within it. If it was only one font, you could learn that the A's map to Q's and the B's map to C's and all, and you could figure what that 26 to 26 letter convention is and go backwards, right? And you're like, cool, I've broken this. No, you can change it per document. That's evil, right? You could encode your IP address with the specific one you chose. I mean, you could do all sorts of things. Or you could have multiple fonts. Multiple fonts means you can have a new font for every single character. And there is literally no way you're able to scrape that. Like, how do you get across this, right? So if it's JavaScript, right, it's not hard. You turn off the JavaScript, really easy. If it's those hidden spans, you find the rule, and you figure out the rule, and you write that. If it's a font remapping trick, you get the mechanical turk. You throw money at it, because that's it. Because there's really no other way to get that than OCR technology. So that's pretty much the most advanced one I can think of. I had a really good time going through this talk. I really want you guys to tweet and figure out any kind of new hacks that you guys might come up with, or things that you've seen, and maybe publish them to the media. We can talk about that. Yep. And thank you.
Any questions? No, awesome. Oh, wait, one, yes.
Have you seen any font remapping on websites?
Can you speak up?
Have you seen any font remapping on websites?
No, I wrote this about a year ago. So
PDF document, but actually HTML. So,
oh, those spans, the hidden spans I've seen.
no, you can create custom fonts in HTML, right?
Yeah, so you could do that. You could do that same kind of trick, and it would be just as hard. I use PDFs because a lot of us work with government documents, and government documents are often in PDF form. And so this is, it's not directly on the web as a web page, but it's served up through the web. So I envision them through PDFs. And PDFs are kind of a fun language. So.
Don't the PDFs get much bigger with embedded fonts?
What do you feel about that? Yes, they do get bigger, but that's why you can balance them. So he asked a really good question. Don't they get bigger as you make a new font for each one? But you don't have to make a new font for every single one. What if you have just 5 fonts and then you rotate through them? That's going to be harder. If it's one font, somebody could figure out the encoding. If it's 5 fonts, then it's just like, it's too much, right? And then you can still keep it a reasonable size. And nobody's going to notice that your 100K PDF is now 200K.
Have you ran into anyone who's using like image tracking, where for like example, you have newsletters, right? You click on it, all of a sudden you see that it's got a custom code on it. You know it's tailored to you, and then you get the generic image. Has anybody served you a page like that?
Like I said, I saw it in Science Magazine for the PDFs that they served to us. That it was a piece of metadata coded in there, and it was actually really easy to remove. But it has serious legal consequences, right? Because you have, my employer is the NIH. And if I were to download too many things from the NIH, they could come back and restrict our access and charge them a lot of money. So I have seen that in the wild, and I have seen them embedded in PDFs, because that's what I work with. But with images, I haven't seen it, but I guarantee you they're out there.
There's a couple of newsletters like that. They do that. They'll tack it on. I look at it, and every image is different. They tack on a little bit of an indicator to say this was sent in this newsletter to this individual, and it's on. And I wouldn't imagine that it would be that much harder to do it for a website.
Nope. Yeah, you could do every piece of content you can protect in this sort of way. If you could find an example and put it on the meetup, I think that'd be kind of neat for everybody to see.
Oh, I can see your company that does background for technology.
That'd be fun. More questions?
So I was at the academic conference, and they were presenting some visualization and grabbed the web link. So you try to go into their system, just try to use it live and see what's going on. It's like a login page, but the web page was going slow. So I opened up the developer console and just all the raw data files that they were using for downloading in the back end. They were patents of technical tech companies. So they were trying to put a login screen to kind of protect the data, so you cannot access or cannot access the system. But then it was actually being downloaded in the back end. You could just access it that way. So that is one way to maybe think about how you would restrict access to the data. But very simple way again to kind of go through that login screen. Just because you put a login screen doesn't mean that.
So they had a login screen,
yes,
but it was background loading all of the data.
Yes.
So once you went past the login screen, you would then see that.
They would just render the data.
Oh, okay.
So it just,
Wow.
one page,
That's
just
awesome.
downloading those CSV files, like hundreds of CSV files, and it was like boring. I didn't do anything with it, being a smart, hack, but it was interesting to think about, just like, suppose you have a login screen, doesn't mean that you.
So you're saying there's lots of people that use the black hat techniques?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right on.
More questions?
Cool. Any other questions? All right, so some of us are going to Tonic, which is out those doors to the left, down about a block and a half on the corner. We'll see if we can grab a spot there. If you are hiring, if you could just come up front and hang out for just a couple minutes, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming this evening. Happy New Year.